The space station floated in the darkness like a metal flower. Below it, the massive gas giant Seven swirled with storms bigger than entire planets. The station was called Horizon's Edge, and it was home to 200 scientists, soldiers, and workers. Half of them were human. The other half were. There were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. They had 4 eyes that could see things humans could not even imagine. Heat, electricity, ultraviolet light. They saw it all. They were proud of their eyes. They were proud of everything about themselves. To them, humans were like children who had somehow learned to build spaceships. Dr. Park did not care what the thought. She had work to do. Was 34 years old, with short black hair and tired eyes. She had spent 6 years on this station, working on a project that most people thought was impossible. She wanted to make humans invisible. The idea came from Earth's oceans. Octopuses and cuttlefish could change their skin to match anything around them. Had studied their DNA for years. She had combined it with tiny machines called robots smaller than blood cells. Together, the DNA and the could make skin bend light around itself. At least that was the theory. The laboratory was cold and bright. Computer screens covered the walls, showing diagrams and data that only fully understood. In the center of the room stood a metal chair with straps for arms and legs. It looked like something from a nightmare, but it was just a safety measure. The first human test was about to begin. Lieutenant sat in the chair, rolling up his sleeve. He was 30 years old, with a soldier's build and a smile that appeared at the worst possible moments. He was military liaison, which meant he was supposed to keep her safe and report her progress to the human government. Instead, he had become her friend, and now he was about to become her test subject. "You don't have to do this," said for the 10th time. "You've told me that already," replied. "And I've told you that I want to. Someone has to be first. Why not me? Because if something goes wrong, I'll have to explain to your sister why I turned her brother into a puddle." Laughed, would understand, she might even be jealous. The door to the laboratory slid open. High Observer walked in, his 4 arms folded behind his back. He was the commander of all on the station, and he had invited himself to watch the experiment. Did not like him, but she could not refuse. "Are you still proceeding with this?" asked. His voice was deep and slow, like rocks grinding together. "The formula has not been tested enough. You are risking this human's life for nothing." "It's my life to risk," said. His 4 eyes blinked one after another. Humans are always so eager to damage themselves. It is curious. Ignored him. She picked up a syringe filled with silver liquid. The inside caught the light and sparkled like stars. "Last chance to back out," she said. Held out his arm. "Do it." The needle went in. Pushed the plunger slowly, watching the silver liquid disappear into his vein. For a moment, nothing happened. Looked at his arm, then at his arm again. "I don't feel any." The lights exploded. Not the lights in the room, but the lights everywhere. The entire station shook like a toy in an angry child's hand. Alarms screamed. Red emergency lights flashed. Was thrown to the floor, her head hitting the cold metal. When she looked up, she saw electricity dancing across the walls. Blue lightning crackled through the air, jumping from machine to machine. It found in his chair and wrapped around him like a snake. He screamed. Tried to reach him, but the electricity pushed her back. She could only watch as his body twisted and shook. The silver in his blood were glowing through his skin, making him look like a man made of stars. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The emergency lights kept flashing, but the electricity was gone. The alarms went quiet, pulled herself up and ran to the chair. It was empty. She called. "I'm here," said a voice from exactly where the chair was. Stared, the chair was empty. She could see the straps, the metal frame, the cushion where it had been sitting, but she could also see something, a shape, like heat rising from hot pavement in summer, a shimmer in the air that was almost but not quite a man. "What happened?" asked. His voice was shaking. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Made a sound that had never heard from before. It was fear. "Where is the human?" he demanded. His four eyes were scanning the room wildly, looking everywhere except at the shimmer in the chair. "What trick is this? Where did he go?" "He's right there," said, pointing at the chair. Looked at the chair. He looked at the chair again. "There is nothing there," he said. "My eyes see nothing, no heat, no electricity, no body, the chair is empty." His heart was beating so fast she thought it might escape from her chest. She walked to the chair and reached out her hand. Her fingers touched something solid, warm, real. "I can feel him," she whispered. "I can see him, why can't you?" Stood up from the chair. Two, he looked like a ghost made of summer air. Two, he did not exist at all. "What did you do to me?" asked. He looked at his hands, but his hands were not there. He was invisible even to himself. "I don't know," admitted. "The power surge. The reactor must have released some kind of exotic radiation. It changed you." "Change him back," ordered. His voice was not calm anymore. "Fix this immediately." Ran to her computers. The screens were cracked, but some of them still worked. She pulled up some medical data and felt her blood run cold. "I can't," she said. "They have bonded with his cells. They're part of him now. If I try to remove them, I'll kill him." The room was silent except for the distant hum of the damaged station. Stood very still, his four eyes fixed on the space where was standing. He could not see the human. His perfect, advanced, superior eyes could not see a single thing. Looked at shimmer. She could see him clearly, not perfectly, but clearly enough. Her simple human eyes, the eyes that the thought were so primitive, could see what their eyes could not. "This is impossible," said. "No," replied slowly. "This is just the beginning." Laughed. It was a strange sound coming from empty air. "Well," he said, "I guess the experiment was a success, sort of." Outside the laboratory window, the gas giant continued its endless spinning. The station continued its orbit. And somewhere in the metal halls, emergency teams were running toward the laboratory, not knowing that everything was about to change. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years because they could see everything. They had just met something they could not see at all. And that something was human. 3 days passed like a fever dream, was kept in a sealed room while doctors from both species tried to understand what had happened to him. The doctors were the most confused. Every time they entered the room, they walked into walls, tripped over furniture, and sometimes bumped directly into himself. To their eyes, the room was completely empty. The human doctors had a different problem. They could see, but only barely. He looked like a reflection in a window or a shape made of glass and air. Their instruments could detect him, his heartbeat, his temperature, his brain activity, but their cameras saw nothing at all. Dr. Lee was the one who finally understood. Was the stations, a small woman with large glasses and a habit of talking to herself. She had been studying alien life forms for 15 years, but she had never seen anything like. "It's the spectrum," she explained to in a quiet corner of the medical bay. "They are absorbing and bending light just like you designed them to, but the radiation changed how they work. They're not targeting visible light anymore. They're targeting everything." "Everything?" asked. "Infrared, ultraviolet, electromagnetic radiation, every wavelength that advanced alien species used to see," pushed her glasses up her nose. "They evolved on a world with 3 suns. Their eyes can see almost the entire spectrum, but human eyes are different. We only see a tiny slice of light. We're too limited to be fooled." Let this sink in. So our weakness is actually protecting us. Exactly. Human eyes are so simple that the camouflage doesn't know how to trick them. We see through it without even trying. This news spread through the human crew like fire. Within hours, Everyone knew that had become invisible to aliens but not to humans. Some people were scared, most were excited, and a few began to have ideas. Ensign, found in the laboratory that night, was young, only 22, with quick eyes and a quicker mind. She worked in communications, which meant she heard everything that happened on the station before anyone else. "They are afraid," said, keeping her voice low. "I've been listening to their channels. They're calling a monster, a ghost. High Observer has requested permission to have him killed." Felt ice in her stomach. What? The council the request, for now, but is powerful and he's scared. Scared people do stupid things. Looked at the syringe on her desk. It still held a small amount of the silver liquid. "What are you thinking?" she asked. The young woman smiled, but there was no humor in it. "I'm thinking that one invisible human is a threat, but what if there were more? What if there were too many to kill?" It was a dangerous thought, a revolutionary thought. Should have reported it to her superiors. She should have locked the laboratory and walked away. Instead, she thought about 20 years of being treated like a lesser creature. She thought about humans being seats on councils. She thought about laughing at human art, human music, human dreams. "Find me volunteers," said. "People we can trust, people who are willing to take the risk." Nodded and disappeared into the station's corridors. Over the next week, 4 people came to his laboratory in secret. The first was his younger sister. She was a combat pilot with sharp features and sharper reflexes. When warned her about the dangers, just shrugged. "My brother is invisible and alone," said. "I won't let him be alone anymore." The second volunteer was Sergeant. He was old for a soldier, nearly 50, with gray hair and scars on his hands. He had served in 3 different conflicts and had been passed over for promotion 6 times, always in favor of aliens who had less experience but higher species status. "I'm tired of being invisible in the way that doesn't matter," said. "Let me be invisible in the way that does." The third was herself. She sat in the metal chair with her eyes closed, breathing slowly. "Someone has to tell our story," she said. "I want to be there when it happens." The fourth volunteer surprised everyone. Doctor was the station's physicist, a quiet man who spent most of his time alone with equations and theories. He rarely spoke to anyone and never attended social events. But when he walked into the laboratory, his eyes were bright with something that might have been hope. "I have spent my whole life being overlooked," said softly. "I would like to be overlooked on my own terms." Had improved the serum since accident. She had added stabilizers and safety protocols. The new formula would not require a power surge or exotic radiation. It would work on its own, slowly changing the cells over 24 hours. One by one, she injected the volunteers. One by one, they faded from alien sight. The process was strange to watch. First, their edges became soft, like a painting left in the rain. Then their colors drained away, leaving only shapes. Finally, the shapes themselves became transparent until only humans could see them. Was waiting when his sister completed the change. For the first time in 3 days, he hugged someone who could see him clearly. "Welcome to the shadows," he said. Punched his arm. "You're still my annoying older brother, visible or not." The 5 invisible humans gathered in a storage room, away from eyes. Was there too, though she had not taken the serum herself. Someone needed to stay visible. Someone needed to be the face of whatever came next. "What do we do now?" asked. Before anyone could answer, the station's alarm began to wail. Red lights flashed. A voice spoke over the speakers in both human language and tongue. "Emergency alert. Distress signal received from mining colony on Moon 7. B. Hostile forces have taken 200 colonists hostage. All combat personnel report to briefing room immediately." The 5 invisible humans looked at each other. "That colony is mostly human," said. "Our people are in danger." "They will send their fleet," added. "But their ships are slow. It will take them 14 hours to reach the moon. Smiled. It was the smile he wore when he was about to do something stupid and brave. We can get there in 6, he said, if we steal a transport. That's illegal, pointed out. So is taking hostages, replied. I know which law I care about more. Looked at the 5 shimming shapes in front of her. They were not soldiers, not really. They were scientists and officers and pilots who had been changed by an accident. But they were also human, and humans had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. They had crawled out of caves and reached for the stars. They were very good at doing impossible things. Go, said, save our people and come back alive. Gave her a salute that she could barely see. We're shadows now, he said. Shadows don't die, they just wait for the light to change. Then the 5 of them walked out of the room, passing a guard who never knew they were there. The hunt had begun. The stolen transport cut through space like a knife through black water. Inside, 5 invisible humans sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Through the windows, the moon's 7B grew larger with every passing minute. The mining colony was called New Dawn. It was built inside a crater, protected from the moon's harsh surface by a massive dome of reinforced glass and metal. 3,000 people lived there, digging precious metals from the ancient rock. Most of them were human. The galaxy always gave humans the dangerous jobs. The attackers had fought the before, years ago in a border conflict that the history books had already forgotten. They were creatures, tall and thin with 6 legs and compound eyes that could see in almost every direction at once. Their bodies were covered in hard shells that could stop bullets. Their claws could cut through steel. They were also cruel. They did not take prisoners for ransom. They took prisoners for entertainment. Approaching the moon's dark side, said from the pilot's seat. Her hands moved over controls that seemed to float in empty air. I'll put us down 2 kilometers from the colony. We walk from there. 2 kilometers in spacesuits, muttered. My old knees are going to love that. Would you prefer to land on top of thee and say hello? Asked. I would prefer to be 30 years younger, but we don't always get what we want. The transport landed without a sound. The 5 humans put on their spacesuits and stepped onto the moon's surface. The sky above them was filled with stars, more stars than anyone could count. The gas giant 7 hung on the horizon like a painted eye. They walked in silence. Their suits left footprints in the gray dust, but there was no one to see them. After an hour, the dome of New Dawn appeared ahead, glowing faintly against the darkness. I count 12 guards on the outer wall, said. His voice was calm, as if he was reading numbers from an equation. Thermal sensors, motion detectors, and what looks like a heartbeat scanner. Can you get past them? Asked. Their technology is designed to find living creatures. It searches for heat, movement, electromagnetic signals. Paused. But it cannot search for something it cannot define. The scanners will see our suits, our heartbeats, our body heat. They will try to build a picture of what we are. But the picture will not make sense. We will look like ghosts in the machine. Will that stop the alarms? No, but it will confuse them. By the time they understand what they are seeing, we will be inside. They approached the dome's main entrance. 2 guards stood at the gate, their compound eyes scanning the empty landscape. Their claws clicked against their weapons, a nervous sound that echoed in the thin atmosphere. Walked directly between them. The guards saw nothing. Their eyes, which could detect a beetle from a kilometer away, could not detect the human passing close enough to touch them. Their scanners screamed warnings about undefined shapes and impossible readings, but the guards saw no enemy. They saw only moonlight and shadows. This is very strange, one guard said to the other in the clicking language. Probably just equipment failure, the second guard replied. This moon plays tricks on sensors. Inside the dome, the situation was worse than they had expected. They had gathered all 200 hostages in the central plaza, surrounded by armed soldiers. The hostages sat on the cold ground with their hands on their heads. Many of them were crying. Some were bleeding. The commander stood on a raised platform, speaking into a communication device. He was larger than the other, with black markings on his shell that indicated high rank. "Fleet will arrive in 8 hours," he was saying. "Tell them the price has doubled. If they refuse, we start executing hostages, 1 per hour." His hands curled into fists. Among the hostages, she could see children. Human children born on this moon who had never known anything but work and survival. They did not deserve this. "We need a plan," she whispered through the suit's radio. "I have one," replied. "You and take the hostages. Free them quietly, lead them to the emergency shelters in the eastern section. Find their communications array and cut it. I don't want them calling for backup." "What about Ewan?" asked. Smiled inside his helmet. "We're going to have a conversation with the commander." They split up and moved through the crowd of soldiers like wind through leaves. The soldiers felt nothing, saw nothing. One moment their prisoners were guarded, the next moment the prisoners were being led away by invisible hands. Some hostages screamed when they felt themselves being touched by something they could not see. Whispered to them in Korean, the language of their ancestors, telling them to stay quiet, telling them they were being rescued. Found the communications array in a building near the plaza. 3 technicians sat at consoles, monitoring signals and sending messages. She walked past them, sat down at an empty console and began typing. "Strange," one technician said. "My screen is doing things on its own." "Mine too," another replied. They watched in confusion as their systems shut down one by one. Error messages filled their screens. Connections dropped. By the time they thought to call for help, there was no way to call anyone. In the central plaza, and climbed onto the commander's platform. The commander was still shouting into his dead communication device, not understanding why no one was responding. Leaned close to the commander's head. "Hello," he said. The commander spun around, his claws raised to strike. He saw nothing. His compound eyes searched every direction, finding only empty air. "Who speaks?" the commander demanded. "Show yourself." "I'm right here," said. "You just can't see me." The commander swung his claws through the air, hitting nothing. He fired his weapon at random, the energy bolts burning holes in the platform but touching no one. "I am going to give you one chance," continued. "Surrender now, drop your weapons, let your soldiers know that the fight is over." "I surrender to no one," the commander screamed, "especially not to invisible ghosts." "That's unfortunate," said, "because my friends have already freed your hostages, your communications are down, and your soldiers are about to have a very bad day." As if on cue's voice came through the radio. "Hostages secure. All 200 are in the emergency shelters, ready when you are." Reached out and took the weapon from the commander's claws. To the watching from below, the weapon seemed to float in the air, then disappear entirely. "Here's what's going to happen," said. "You're going to tell your soldiers to put down their weapons. Then you're going to sit in the plaza and wait for the fleet to arrive. And when they ask who defeated you, you're going to tell them the truth." "What truth?" the commander whispered. "That you were beaten by 5 humans. 5 soft, slow, weak humans that you couldn't even see." The commander's legs gave out. He collapsed onto the platform, his compound eyes staring at nothing. "What are you?" he asked. Knelt beside him. For just a moment he let himself become slightly visible, a shimmer, a suggestion of a human shape. "We're the ones you forgot to be afraid of," he said. 6 hours later, the fleet arrived to find the sitting in the plaza with their claws raised in surrender. The hostages were safe. The colony was secured, and 5 invisible humans were sitting on the landing pad, drinking recycled coffee from the colony's vending machines. High Observer was the first to step off his ship. He stood in front of the empty air where his sensors told him 5 humans were sitting. "This is impossible," he said. Raised his coffee cup in a toast that could not see. "You keep saying that word," replied. "I don't think it means what you think it means." The war for respect had just begun. The news spread across the galaxy like a disease that no one could cure. On every planet, on every station, on every ship traveling through the darkness between stars, people were talking about what happened on 7B. 5 humans had defeated an entire raiding force. 5 humans who could not be seen by any alien species. 5 humans who walked through walls of soldiers and advanced technology as if they did not exist. The story grew with each telling. Some said there were 50 invisible humans, not 5. Others claimed they could walk through solid walls or that they could kill with a touch. Fear made the story bigger than the truth, but the truth was frightening enough. The Galactic Assembly called an emergency meeting. The assembly hall was the largest building ever constructed by any species. It floated in neutral space, a massive sphere of crystal and metal that could hold representatives from 10,000 worlds. Today, it held representatives from 500 worlds, and all of them were afraid. Dr. Park stood alone at the speaker's podium in the center of the hall. She had been chosen to represent humanity at this meeting, not because she was a leader, but because she was the one who had created the serum, the one who had turned 5 ordinary humans into something that terrified the galaxy. Above her, the seats rose in endless circles, filled with creatures of every shape and color. They sat in their section, their 4 eyes fixed on her with cold anger. The collective, a species of connected minds, hummed with nervous energy. Even the had sent a representative, though he sat as far from the human section as possible. High Observer spoke first, his voice amplified to fill the entire hall. "This human has created a weapon of impossible danger," he said. "Her so-called experiment has produced creatures that cannot be detected by any known technology, creatures that can infiltrate any location, assassinate any target, destroy any security system. This cannot be allowed to continue." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. "I propose that the human serum be immediately destroyed," continued. "All affected humans must be neutralized, and the entire human species must be placed under strict observation to prevent future development of similar weapons." Listened to the translation of his words and felt something cold settle in her chest. Neutralized. He was asking for permission to murder and the others. He was asking for permission to enslave her entire species. "May I speak?" she asked. The assembly fell silent. 10,000 alien eyes turned toward the small human standing alone at the center of the hall. "For 50 years, humanity has been part of the galactic community," began. "We were welcomed as junior partners. We were given the worst colony worlds, the most dangerous jobs, the smallest voice in these halls. We accepted this because we believed that hard work would earn us respect." She paused, letting her words echo in the vast space. "We were wrong. Hard work did not earn us respect. It earned us more work. When we built successful colonies, you took them for yourselves. When we developed new technologies, you claimed them as joint projects. When we asked for equal treatment, you laughed and told us to be patient." The murmurs returned, but they were different now. Some were angry, some were uncomfortable, and some, mostly from the human section, were nodding. "The camouflage serum was an accident," continued. "I did not set out to create a weapon. I was trying to help soldiers survive on dangerous missions. But when the accident happened, when we discovered that humans could become invisible to other species, I made a choice." She looked directly at. "I chose to give my people a chance. For the first time in 50 years, we had something that you could not take from us. Something that made you see us as more than servants and laborers. Something that made you afraid." "You admit it then," said. "You created these creatures deliberately. You armed them against the galaxy." I gave 5 volunteers the ability to walk unseen. They used that ability to save 200 innocent lives. They did not kill a single soldier. They did not damage a single piece of property. They simply appeared. And your entire species lost its mind with fear. The representative clicked his claws nervously. What does that tell you? Asked. What does it tell you about the galaxy we have built when the idea of humans being equal makes you this terrified? No one answered. You have called us soft, slow, primitive. You have mocked our eyes for being limited, our bodies for being weak, our lives for being short. But those limited eyes can see what yours cannot. That weakness taught us to be clever instead of strong. That short life taught us to value every moment. She took a deep breath. Humanity is not asking for war. We are not asking for revenge. We are asking for what should have been given 50 years ago: full membership in this assembly, equal trade rights, recognition as a sovereign species with the same dignity as any other. Stood up from his seat, and if we refuse. Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. If you refuse, she said, then you will spend the rest of your existence wondering if there is a human standing behind you, wondering if your secrets are being heard, wondering if the shadows in your room are just shadows or something more. The lights in the assembly hall flickered, and from the darkness around the edges of the great room, 20 shapes began to appear. They faded in slowly, like paintings being created by an invisible artist. Human shapes, men and women in simple clothing, standing in places where no one had seen them enter. They had been there the entire time. The assembly erupted into chaos. Representatives screamed, fled, climbed over each other trying to reach the exits. Security forces rushed in with weapons drawn, searching for targets they could not find. Stood frozen in his seat, his 4 eyes wide with horror. How long, he whispered, how long have they been there? Did not answer. She simply watched as the 20 invisible humans walked calmly through the panicking crowd, touching nothing, hurting no one. They were just present, just visible, just human. It took an hour for order to be restored. When the representatives finally returned to their seats, their faces were changed. The arrogance was gone. The dismissiveness was gone. In their place was something that humanity had never seen from the galaxy before. Respect. We will discuss your proposals, the assembly speaker said, her voice shaking only slightly. The meeting is adjourned until tomorrow. Bowed her head in thanks. As she walked out of the hall, fell into step beside her, visible now, his face tired but proud. That was quite a speech, he said. I meant every word. I know. He looked back at the hall where aliens were still whispering nervously. Do you think it worked? Thought about the fear in his eyes. She thought about the chaos when the invisible humans appeared. She thought about 50 years of being treated like nothing. It's a start, she said. For the first time they see us, really see us. Everything else comes after. They walked out of the assembly hall together, into a galaxy that would never look at humanity the same way again. The shadows had spoken, and the universe had listened. 6 months had passed since the day the assembly learned to fear. The galaxy had changed in ways both large and small. The Galactic Assembly had voted to grant humanity full membership, passing the measure by a margin so thin that some said it was only fear that pushed it through. Human representatives now sat in the same sections as and all the other ancient species. Human voices were heard in debates. Human votes were counted equally. Not everyone was happy about this. Some species refused to accept the new reality. They called humans cheaters, cowards, creatures who had stolen power instead of earning it. They demanded that the serum be shared with everyone or destroyed or both. When their demands were ignored, some of them tried to take action. They learned quickly that attacking invisible enemies was a losing strategy. They sent assassins to kill. The assassins walked into her laboratory and found themselves surrounded by humans they could not see. They dropped their weapons and surrendered without a fight. The collective tried to hack human communication systems to steal the serum formula. Their best hackers spent 3 days working on a database they thought was unguarded. When they finally broke through the security, they found a single message waiting for them. "We knew you were coming. Better luck next time." Even the made one last attempt to reassert their dominance. High Observer gathered a fleet of 20 warships and traveled to Earth's outer colonies, intending to make a show of force. He found human defense stations that his sensors could not detect, crewed by soldiers his eyes could not see. After 3 days of failed scanning, he turned his fleet around and went home. The message was clear: humanity was no longer prey. Dr. Park did not care about politics or power games. She had returned to her laboratory on Horizon's edge, not to make more invisible soldiers, but to understand what she had accidentally created. Her findings were published in a scientific paper that caused almost as much chaos as the assembly incident. "Human perception is not limited," she wrote. "It is specialized. Our eyes evolved on a planet filled with predators and prey, where survival depended on noticing small details. We learned to see patterns. We learned to detect inconsistencies. We learned to notice when something was wrong, even if we could not explain why." The paper continued with data and equations, but the conclusion was simple. Human eyes did not see through the camouflage. Human eyes saw around it. They noticed the space where something should be. They detected the absence of light, the wrongness of shadow, the tiny clues that revealed hidden things. "We are not primitive," wrote. "We are paranoid, and that paranoia saved our species." Lieutenant, now Captain, read the paper in his office at Shadow Corps headquarters. Shadow Corps was the official name for the invisible human military unit. It had grown from 5 volunteers to over 200, all of them enhanced with the improved serum, all of them dedicated to protecting human interests across the galaxy. "Paranoid," said, laughing. "She makes it sound like a compliment." His sister sat across from him, visible today because they were in a secure human facility. She had become the Shadow Corps' best field operator, known for her ability to complete impossible missions without leaving a trace. "It is a compliment," said. "We survived ice ages because we were paranoid about predators. We built cities because we were paranoid about weather. We reached the stars because we were paranoid about being alone. And now we're invisible because we were paranoid about being seen." Something like that. A message appeared on screen. It was from High Observer requesting a private meeting. Stared at it for a long moment. "That's unexpected," said. "He's probably going to try to kill me." "Probably? Are you going?" Thought about it. Had been their enemy since the beginning. He had called for their deaths, tried to suppress their technology, treated them as monsters and threats. But enemies could become allies, and old hatreds could become old history. "Yes," said, "I'm going." The meeting took place on Horizon's edge, in a small observation room overlooking the gas giant. Stood at the window, his 4 arms folded behind his back, watching the endless storm swirl below. When entered, did not turn around. "I have hunted across 100 worlds," the said. "I have killed creatures with claws and teeth and poison and fire. I thought I understood what it meant to be a predator." He turned to face. His 4 eyes were tired and something in them had changed. "I was wrong," continued. "I was a predator among prey. I was never truly challenged. When I met something I could not hunt, I did not know how to respond. I responded with fear, and fear made me stupid." Said nothing, he waited. "I have come to apologize," said. The words seemed to cause him physical pain. "Not for my species, not for the assembly, just for myself. I judged humanity by what I could see, and I could not see what mattered." The observation room was silent, except for the hum of the station's engines. "Apology accepted," said finally. Four eyes blinked in surprise. That easily. Holding grudges takes energy. I have better things to do with my energy. Walked to the window and stood beside the. Besides, you're not entirely wrong. Humans are dangerous. We've always been dangerous. The serum didn't change that. It just made it visible, or invisible depending on how you look at it. Made a sound that might have been a laugh. You make jokes about everything. It's how we survive. If we couldn't laugh at ourselves, we would have gone crazy a long time ago. They stood together, watching the gas giant turn slowly in the void. Two species that had been enemies. Two people who had been on opposite sides of a conflict that could have destroyed them both. What happens now? Asked. Thought about the question. 6 months ago, he had been a simple military officer. Now he commanded a force that could reshape the galaxy. 6 months ago, humanity had been a minor species. Now they were a power that everyone respected or feared. Now we move forward, said. We learn to work together. We build something better than what we had before, and we try not to make the same mistakes that got us here. That sounds very optimistic. That's also how we survive. We believe things can get better, even when evidence suggests otherwise. Nodded slowly. Perhaps that is the most dangerous thing about your species, not the invisibility, not the cleverness, the hope. Smiled, maybe. Or maybe hope is just another form of paranoia. We're paranoid that tomorrow will be worse, so we work to make it better. He turned away from the window. I have to go. Shadow Corps has a mission on the Outer Rim. Some pirates have been attacking human colony ships. They think we're easy targets. They will learn otherwise. They always do. Walked to the door, then paused. One more thing, he said. The next time you want to meet, you don't have to send a formal request. Just ask. We're neighbors now. That's what neighbors do. He left before could respond. In her laboratory, Park worked on new equations and new possibilities. The serum had opened doors that no one had expected. Already, human scientists were exploring other ways to use the technology. Medical applications, industrial uses, even artistic experiments, with painters creating images that could only be seen by certain species. The future was uncertain, as futures always were. But for the first time in 50 years, humanity was walking toward it as equals. Somewhere in the station was preparing for a mission. Somewhere else was writing a history of everything that had happened, knowing that future generations would want to understand. Was training new recruits. Was studying the mathematics of light and shadow. And in the observation room, High Observer stood alone, staring at the stars. He could not see the human guards stationed outside his door. He could not see the surveillance systems watching his every move. He could not see the 1,000 ways that humanity had already changed the galaxy. But he was beginning to understand. Humans had always been there. In every shadow, in every corner, in every overlooked space that larger species ignored. They had been watching, learning, waiting. And now, finally, the universe could see them back. The shadows had become the light. And the light was human.